In this video, we'll be looking at how we can evaluate math expressions using the order of operations and discussing why the order of operations is so important. So I want you to take a look at the problem below, and what you'll notice in this particular problem is that we have a variety of operations. We have multiplication, subtraction, division, addition, an exponent, some more multiplication, parentheses, subtraction. And where this gets really tricky is students don't necessarily know where to start, what to do first. And this is the whole reason that the order of operations exists. It exists to tell us which operation to do next. And it gives us a step-by-step process of the exact operation order we should be going through so that we can all remain consistent and solve this same expression and get the exact same answer. Because if we didn't follow the exact same steps, we would get a multitude of different answers. So in order to easily remember the order of operations, mathematicians came up with the acronym of Pemdas. And this is P, E, M and D on the same level, and A and S on the same level. And each one of those letters stands for a math operation, and we do them in order. So the P is what comes first, and the P stands for parentheses. And parentheses can really mean any grouping mechanism. So this can be a parenthesis, this can be a bracket, this could be even something like a square root where it's got a bunch of stuff on the inside. Anything that groups things together needs to come first. And a special thing to remember is that if you have, say, a parenthesis, and then you have a parenthesis inside of it, you actually start at the innermost first, and then you work your way out. But we always start with our parentheses and our grouping items first. And if we look down at the problem below, we can see that we have a parentheses in that problem. So if we were following the order of operations, we would do the parentheses piece first, which means we would do 4 minus 6, or if we're using keep, change, this would be 4 plus a negative 6, and those added together become negative 2. So that is the first operation that I would do. 4 plus a negative 6 is negative 2 inside those parentheses, and that has now been simplified. Then, once we get rid of all of our parentheses, we move on to the E, which stands for exponents. So any exponents that we see come next. And in this particular problem, what I see is an exponent right here. I see negative 2 to the power of 2. So I can kind of work that off to the side, and I have negative 2 times negative 2, which I know is 4. So now I can rewrite this, minus 6 divided by 2, plus 3 times 4, because these evaluated to be 4. Then I move on, once I'm done with all of my exponents, to the MD, which stands for multiplication and division. And these happen together. And how we choose which multiplication or division to do first is we evaluate from left to right. So here I can see that I have a multiplication, and I have a division, and I have another multiplication. I can see that all right in here. So I'm going to start from left to right. I start with the 4 times 5, which is 20. And then from there, I would evaluate the next one, which is 6 divided by 2. So I'd have 20 minus 3. And then from here, I'd do that last multiplication, and I'd end up with 20 minus 3 plus 12. And then from here, I've done all of my multiplication and division, so I move on to my final step, which is AS, which is add and subtract. And again, we do these from left to right. Now, I like to do these by using keep, change. You even could have used keep, change earlier to help prevent yourself from making any errors. but I like to use keep, change to turn that into 20 plus a negative 3 and then plus the 12. So now we do addition and subtraction from left to right. So 20 plus a negative 3 is 17, plus 12 would give us 29. So it is a slow process. You have to make sure that you're doing each step in order, one at a time, all the way through until you've evaluated every single operation. So on this slide, all we're going to do is use the order of operations to evaluate the expressions on the screen. So here in my first problem up here in A, I'm looking through, and if I follow my Pemdas, remember those are grouped together, I start with parentheses, but I don't see any parentheses. So then I move on to exponents where I see 4 squared. So I know I need to do 48 divided by 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16, plus then 24 divided by 3 times 5 divided by 4. Then I move on to multiplication and division from left to right. So I start with my division over here. 48 divided by 16 is 3. And then I move on to my next multiplication or division, which is here at 24 divided by 3, which is 8. I then do my next multiplication or division, which is 8 times 5, which is 40. I then finally end with that 40 divided by 4. That's my last multiplication or division. So I have 3 plus 10, and then I apply addition or subtraction. There's only one of them, so I don't need to worry about left to right. And here I end up with an answer of 13. Then for the second one, I'm going to again start with the order of operations, and I'm going to start with those parentheses or those groupings. And what I notice here is I have brackets, and then inside of those brackets I have parentheses, and I need to start with my innermost parentheses. So I'm going to start with that 2 minus 5. So this becomes 5. We then have a big bracket. 4 plus 3 times 2 minus 5 is negative 3. If you don't like subtraction, remember you can write this as 2 plus a negative 5, which would get you that negative 3. And then from there, we put our bracket back in, we square it, and we add on that subtraction of 10. Now from here, I still need to work inside of this bracket. I know it's a little difficult to see, but we got to start inside of there and keep working. So if we look inside of here, I notice I have 4 plus 3 times negative 3. And I know that I need to be inside of this bracket, but I'm not really sure what operation to do first. And inside of this bracket, so if you just focus on inside, I'll use it in different colors so you can see it. If we focus on inside of here, we need to apply the order of operations. So that will help us decide whether the plus or the multiplication come first. And because multiplication comes first in our order of operations, we actually do this multiplication here first. So I do 3 times negative 3, which is negative 9. So here I have 5. Inside the brackets, I now have 4 plus negative 9. Then all squared. And then inside of here, I finally only have one more operation in the bracket. So 4 plus a negative 9 is negative 5. And then outside the brackets, I have that squared. Now that I've finally dealt with all of my parentheses, I can now finally look at that exponent. Notice how that exponent was around that entire bracket. So now I look at that exponent and I see negative 5 squared, which means a negative 5 times a negative 5, which is 25. So here I have 5 times 25, and then minus 10. So now from here, I'm done with parentheses, I'm done with exponents. I now move on to multiplication and division, which I can see I only have one of those in 5 times 25, and while that seems like kind of a large problem, that's like having 5 quarters, and I know that's 125. Now if I didn't like the subtraction, I could change this to 125, keep, change, do plus a negative 10, but my last operation here is I need to do addition or subtraction, and these both will result in 115. All right, and finally moving on to this third one down here. This one's a little tricky because it has a big fraction. And if you see a big fraction, a lot in a numerator and a lot in a denominator, you can assume that there's a big set of parentheses or brackets around them. And essentially what we're going to need to do is solve the numerator, then solve the denominator, and simplify. So let's focus on just that numerator for a second. So here up in the numerator we see negative 2 cubed plus 12. And I know out of those operations that the exponent of cubed has to happen first. So if I do negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, that becomes a negative 8. So then I have negative 8 plus 12, which then if I again apply my order of operations, I just have that addition left, and negative 8 plus 12 would give me 4. So now if I look down at my denominator, I have a multiplication, a subtraction, and a division. So I'm going to do my multiplication and division from left to right. So 5 times 4 is 20 minus 8 divided by 4. Now if you don't like that subtraction sign in there, you can also rewrite that as 20 plus a negative 8 divided by 4. That's what I like to do so I don't make any errors. So then from here I still have 4 in my numerator, but negative 8 divided by 4 gives me negative 2, so I have 20 plus negative 2, which is 4 then over 18, which then, if you know your fractions well, you know that you can simplify 4/18 to become 2/9. So here we just applied those order of operations and then worked through them slowly. Don't rush through this, don't make sign errors, take your time.